welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for watching. Today I have a video all about a few books that I've been reading recently. I have mentioned a couple of these over on my blog post, but I'm going to quickly mention those two just very briefly, and then I'm going to talk about a book that I've been waiting to review on here for quite some time because, well, you'll see what I thought about it. And then I've got one more book that I absolutely loved that I really want to talk about too. So without further ado, let's talk about the first book. Okay, so the first book that I want to talk about, and one I briefly mentioned on my blog Ray of Style, is Before the Coffee Gets Cold. Now this book was really good. It's a really easy read. It's quite short, as you can see, so if you like shorter books then this will be great for you. The only thing I found about it was quite repetitive. So basically the story is about a coffee shop in Japan where you can ask for a cup of coffee on a specific table. There is a ghost sat opposite you at this table, and when you drink the coffee you can go back to a specific time with a person that you want to talk to basically, but whatever you do in that time will not change the present or the future, which in a way is kind of a good thing. It was perceived as like a bad thing throughout the whole of the book, I guess because the people wanted to go back and like sort of take back things that they regretted, but in a funny way. Obviously there's been loads of books and films about time traveling and stuff, and the thing that always goes wrong is that they change the future and stuff. So I actually thought it was an interesting thing that it wouldn't change anything, like because a lot of the people who wanted to go back were like, oh well, then there's no point in going back if it can't change anything. But in a funny way, the point of going back was to sort of just get closure for yourself rather than to change the situation. You could just say sorry or goodbye to someone and get closure for you, even though when you got back to present it wouldn't have happened. It's almost like having a dream that you did it. So it's like time traveling, but not really, because you're not going to a time that actually happened. It's a little bit weird, but it is a really good book. I recommend reading it. If you're a fast reader, this will be really easy to read in an afternoon. If you're a beginner reader, this is super easy, but if you're up for something a bit more complex with a better concept, then I probably wouldn't recommend it, and I think that's why I found it a little bit lackluster. I just didn't know what I was what the purpose of it was in the end, really, because I think apparently someone told me that it's actually an adaptation of a play, which makes a lot more sense because it kind of is in acts, and each chapter is a different person going to the coffee shop for whatever reason, and the only characters that stay the same are the staff basically. But it just got quite repetitive. Every chapter was a new person, but they went in and they got told that they would have to drink the coffee, and they got told about the ghost on the table, and they got told that they have to get back before the coffee gets cold, and that was the beginning of every chapter. And like by the third time I was like, I know, you don't have to tell me again. Like, I get you're telling the character because it's their first time doing it, but I've now read this basically the same story 3 times. So it's a little bit repetitive, and that's just what I found quite annoying about it. But it's an okay book. Like I say, probably best for beginner readers or even like teenage readers that want to get onto less sort of like tweeny books. Like this could be a good transition book if you're a teenager. But yeah, a bit lackluster for me. I like a little bit more in my books personally. Okay, next up is a book that I really enjoyed, and it's Ordinary People by Diana Evans. I really enjoyed this book. I actually wrote notes on this book, which is probably one of the first times I've done that since my school years in English literature, which was my favourite subject. Yeah, I just felt like it needed annotating. Like, I just got such a big urge to write everything down as I was reading it. It's such an interesting story. It's set in modern times, so if you like contemporary stories, then this is a really good one for you. It's about two couples that are both married, obviously. They're in their separate couples, but they are friends in the story, and it's basically like a story of marriage in today's society. It's a story of love, and how easy it is to fall out of love. It also sort of talks about mental health, having children, motherhood, how that is kind of a dream that is sold to a lot of people, and it doesn't always go how you think it might go. I know a lot of people that have had children and not known about all the negative sides of having children, let's say. Obviously the pros outweigh the cons for the most part, but for a lot of people there's a lot of cons, and it talks about that in this. It's very realistic, which is something I like in a book, because saying that, like, obviously the story is made up, so it's not that realistic, but you know what I mean. I'm quite a realistic kind of person, and I take things for what they are, and this book was kind of like that. There's no dream being sold in this book. It's almost somewhat depressing, but like, just, it's all stories that we've heard before. I really loved it. The way it was written was really clever. There's lots of musical references in this which link to the story, which I really liked. The chapters are quite readable. I never felt like, oh, I want this bit to end. I wanted to carry on reading it and finding out what happens. There's lots of ebbs and flows throughout the book, ups and downs. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought this was a great read. It's not necessarily complexly written or anything too innovating, but it was a really fantastic book, and I really enjoyed the story. There were enough twists in it that I didn't predict for me to carry on reading it. And it's like a really good like size. It's like enough to get your teeth into, but you're not there for weeks. So really recommend this. If you're an avid reader, I think you'll really enjoy this, but even beginner readers, this would be a great one to get into. Yeah, can't recommend it enough. Really enjoyed the story. Okay, and on to one that I really did not enjoy. I've been waiting to do a review on this for a couple of weeks now, because boy oh boy, this might actually be one of the worst books I've ever read in my life, and that's saying a lot because I've read hundreds of books, and this was just really quite atrocious, which is mental because I'm literally looking at the cover now, and the reviews from The Observer say stunningly good. The Metro said breathtaking. Emma Donoghue, don't know who that is, said it's an instant classic, and The Guardian said it's a burnished gem, it's brilliant. I couldn't disagree more with all of those. It was longlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction in 2019 and everything. Financial Times said it was exquisite, will send shivers down your spine. Well, it just sent shivers of anger down mine. I literally thought this was the most atrocious book, and the book is Ghost Wall by Sarah Moss. I literally don't even know where to start. This book makes me so angry. I'm still enraged by it. Basically, the story is, it's about a family, a mother, a father and a daughter, who the father is very obsessed with the Iron Age, and he is not a very nice person at home either. He's very emotionally and physically abusive to both his wife and daughter. And they go on this trip where you can reenact the Iron Age, basically, and while they're there, a group of students and their professor are also there at the same time, and the daughter befriends some of the students, and the professor and the dad sort of take it in their stride to be the leaders or whatever. This, oh my gosh, it literally boils my blood, this book. I literally don't even know where to start. I almost wish I'd written notes on this so that I could talk about it better, because I just can't get my words out. Basically, I thought Before the Coffee Gets Cold was repetitive. The same thing happens every day in this book. They wake up, the daughter's scared to go and have a wee in the forest because the dad might beat her for it. Then, and I'm not like saying that as if that wouldn't happen. It's terrible. But the whole domestic abuse thing in this book was so poorly written, and almost, I felt, was insulting to anybody who's gone through that. It was so poorly written about. It brought up no awareness of domestic abuse. It was a mockery of it. I'm so angry about it still. And I have read multiple books where there is sexual assaulting, domestic violence, misogyny. I've read books with that in it, and they have all been cleverly and sensitively written, and even the ones that have made me cry have been well written. There is a certain way of writing that plot line and not offending anybody. This did not do that. It was so insulting to anybody who's gone through it. It was so, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, like, it was so blasé about it. It drove me insane. And literally the same thing happens every day. They wake up, she's scared to go and have a wee. She goes and has a wee anyway. She goes, her and the student, the daughter I'm talking about, goes with the students and forages for food. They come back, they get told off, it's not enough food. They said they couldn't find anything. It's not the same time as the Iron Age, and we're in a farm, not an actual wild field like they would have been. The same conversations happened every day in it. For the most part, the professor in the story, once he'd befriended the father, thought he was kind of a lunatic, and all the things that the dad was coming up with, like, let's skin the rabbits, that's realistic, let's do that, let's kill all the birds, blah, blah, blah. The professor's like, oh, we don't really need to go that far, like, we're just reenacting, it doesn't have to be like completely like that. Then the crux of this story all boils down to basically the last 10 pages. And in those 10 pages, the father suggests that they do a reenactment of a sacrifice, and he wants to sacrifice his daughter. And the professor says yes. So all this time, the professor has thought the dad's a lunatic, but you know, the sacrifice thing, yeah, we'll do that. Killing the rabbits, nah, not up for that. Sacrifice, yeah, sure, no problem. I was reading it like, how is this there's no character development in this. The characters are not consistent in what their morals are. One of the boys was lovely the whole way through, then at the end during the sacrifice he cuts the daughter. There was zero consistency, zero. The professor was kind of just, you know, your eccentric professor the whole way through, and then just decided to like sacrifice this man's daughter for real. And not to spoil it or anything, but I'm going to spoil it because I highly recommend you don't read this book. So I'm just going to tell you what the ending is. The last page, the last 10 pages are the sacrifice basically, and on the last page it literally ends just with the police being called and the dad gets arrested. That was the end of the story. It was a pile of garbage. It's so short as well, and yet nothing happened until those last 10 pages. And there could have been a build-up, we could have had character development where these things escalate. None of that, zero consistency. None of the characters were relatable, none of them were reliable in their morals because they kept changing their mind every 2 minutes. It was a joke, like an actual joke. I don't understand the reviews on this. I just don't understand it because I just thought it was atrocious. Like, I'd love to hear anyone's feedback if you've read this, because I know that actually there was quite a hype about this book. So if you've read it, I would really like to hear your comments, like seriously, because I feel like I must be alone because the reviews on the front of it say differently, but I just thought this was an absolute pile of garbage. I thought it was so insulting to anybody that's been through domestic violence. It was completely blasé about the importance of it. There was no need for it in the plot. It was bad, it was poorly written. All of those scenes were so poorly written. I was so angry. I was so angry. It was almost too graphic about the domestic violence. I think that's my problem with it. And Sunbeam's Jess, if any of you follow Sunbeam's Jess on YouTube, she had this, I remember watching a video that she did about a book that was very similar to this, with very overly graphic domestic violence in it. And she said it was, the reason why it upset her was not because it had been written well. It annoyed her because it was like, I can't remember the phrase she used, but it was something like violence porn or something. She said it's purposefully put in there to try and make you feel something, but actually does the complete opposite because it's so poorly written about. Whereas in The Water Cure, which was my favourite book of 2019, I voted that best book of 2019, I thought that book was incredible. There is sexual violence and sexual assault in that book. In Tess of the D'Urbervilles, my favourite book of all time, there is a sexual assault in that book. And both are written so incredibly well. I mean, in Tess of the D'Urbervilles, it's actually written as a metaphor. It actually doesn't mention the scene at all. There's just a very perfect metaphor for what happened in it. So much more chilling than how this was written. It was so overly graphic. It didn't make me feel sorry for the characters. I didn't even relate to the characters. That it was so obviously pretend. I could go on about it forever. I feel like I should stop talking about it now. But like, even in The Water Cure, the assaults were so subtly talked about that was so much more chilling, because that's exactly what it's like. It's like a dream. And then this was, it just wound me up. I'm going to stop talking about it because I just get so cross. But yeah, I thought this was atrocious, and I really want to hear from anybody that read it, because yeah, I just don't want to say anymore. I'm throwing that book out. I'm so angry about it. Okay, so on to the most recent book I've read. In fact, I finished this book today, and honestly, it has gone straight into the top 3 of my favourite books of all time. It's probably third, Tess of the D'Urbervilles, then The Water Cure, then this one. And it is Fates and Furies by Lauren Groff. This is the most incredible book that I have read in a long time. I say it's third, and I think it's only because The Water Cure hit me on another level. So it's second to that, but writing wise, it's on par. This is so cleverly written. Like, genius, just genius. So the backstory is, well, I'll read the blurb actually because it's very well written. Even the blurb's bloody brilliant. It's, every story has 2 sides. Every relationship has 2 perspectives. And sometimes it turns out the key to a great marriage is not its truth, but its secrets. So basically, a little background about this book. The story as a whole is about the marriage between Lotto and Matilda. They meet when they're very young, at the end of college, and they get married within 2 weeks of knowing each other. And they have a very seemingly happy marriage, and they are married until, well, they're married forever. I won't say what happens. One of them passes. I won't say who. You have to read it. In their late 40s, if I remember correctly. So that's what the story is about. It's about their whole entire marriage and the things that go on between them. The clever thing about this book is it is in 2 parts. So the first part is called Fates, and it is from the perspective of Lotto, the husband. So it tells you, it's narrated, it's not in first person, it's in third person, so it's talking about Lotto. But it's Lotto's story, let's say. Tells you about his childhood, tells you about his teenage years, and then it goes on to when he marries Matilda and the whole of their life together. And then you finish his half, and then you go on to Matilda's half. And one thing to note that's very special about this, Lotto's half is all in oh my gosh, what's that word? Sequence. Lotto's half is all in sequence, so it's all being told childhood, teenage years, marriage, life. Like, it's all in the sequence that it happened in. It's very methodical, it's very straightforward, it's seemingly very happy, and the first half was really beautiful. It's so well written. Lotto is a playwright and he goes on to write an opera, and the story of Lotto is written in that sense. A few of the plays that he wrote are also included in the first section, which I absolutely loved. That really, like, that's one way to get me on board. If you're going to throw a play in a book, give it to me. The opera is also written in there, so I read that too. They're very short. They're very, very short. It's only, I think the longest was 4 pages, so it's not like a big portion of the book, but I just thought it was so clever. So that happens. Fates ends and you go into the second half, which is Furies, and that is from Matilda's point of view. Now, Matilda's point of view, again, is written in third person, so it is talking about Matilda, but the timeline is quite mixed up. I can't even remember how it starts, actually. I think it starts just after Fates has finished, and then it goes straight to Matilda's version of events after Lotto's story is finished. But throughout Matilda's side, it keeps going back and forth, and it does that in 2 ways. It goes back to her childhood and back to the present, and back to her childhood and back to the present. And it also goes back to events we read from Lotto's point of view, but as Matilda's point of view. And those were some of the things I found most interesting. So it completely retells a party. Let's go with a party, for example. That's one of the things that happens. So in Fates, it says the party from Lotto's point of view. He's at the party, he's having an amazing time, he's showing off Matilda, he's really happy, all of his friends that are there. Then in the second half, at some point, we go back to that party, but it's from Matilda's point of view. A person she doesn't like is in the corner. She feels really anxious being there. Everything that Lotto is saying is kind of a lie about their life. And you see the other perspective. But Lotto isn't lying, he's just telling it from what he believes is his truth. And that's something I picked up throughout this book, is neither of them lie. I mean, there are points where lies are told, but what my point is Lotto wasn't standing there saying, I'm the happiest husband ever, when he wasn't actually. He really was the happiest husband ever. But Matilda's standing there thinking something completely different. And I just found that so interesting. And it's something that I've actually spoken with my friend Lucy about lots, is how there are people in your life, but you're all living very separate realities. And for example, if you have an argument with somebody, your reality of that argument or your perspective of that argument is going to be different to the other person's, hence why you're arguing. Like when you have an argument about something someone said and they say that's not what I said, and you say, well, it is because I heard what came out your mouth, but it might not be what they meant. And I just find that stuff so interesting. Is that psychology or sociology? I'd love to study that. I just think it's so interesting, because you really can have a completely different perspective of an event or a situation than somebody else that was also there. But your realities can be completely different, and that's what happens in this book. One of the other things I feel like I can tell you without really spoiling is one of the first plays that Lotto writes. He writes it in a manic frenzy, so he isn't completely aware that he's writing it. It's kind of like in a manic frenzy, and then he falls asleep afterwards. And actually Matilda, and in Lotto's side, he falls asleep, he wakes up, he goes and sells the play and makes millions. In Matilda's side, what you didn't know in Lotto's side, because he fell asleep, was Matilda actually went and corrected lots of the script because there were lots of things wrong with it. And I don't know, I just thought it was so brilliantly written. It's never like one person is right or the other person is wrong. Neither of them are right, neither of them are wrong. It's just their separate realities of what the marriage was. Neither of them was sad in the marriage, neither of them are happy in it. It's just a brilliant mix of everything. It's so cleverly written, and one of the things that I really picked up on was Lotto's side of the story is very just a novel in its own, and Matilda's side of the story is just something else. The way it's written is like Matilda's mind, and the way Lotto's side is written is Lotto's mind. And in Matilda's side, there's lots of things that have happened in her past to get her to where she is that you find out about. There's some massive twists at the end which I never saw coming. In fact, a little tip if you do read this book, the last, I think, 4 chapters of Matilda's side have some incredible twists in, but you really have to read carefully to pick up on them, because that was something else I loved about this book, is it's very subtly done how clever it is. And some of the twists at the end are not made obvious. There's no dun 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 moment. It's kind of just placed in the paragraph, and if you read over it, you're going to miss what that twist was. And it's a big one, because I had to read that paragraph twice to actually get my head around what the twist was. It's fantastic. I can't sing this book's praises enough. 3rd best book I've ever written, which is really saying something because I've read a hell of a lot of books, and it's up there with Thomas Hardy's. Let's just be honest. It's fantastic. I really want to get more work by Lauren Groff. I just feel like I just need to read everything she's ever written. If it's anything like this, I know I'll love it. And I definitely agree with the reviews on this book. It says, a stunning achievement by The Independent, astonishingly beautiful by the Financial Times, rich, lyrical and rewarding by Paula Hawkins, who wrote The Girl on the Train. I completely agree with all of those reviews. This is a genius story. Okay guys, so those are my 4 most recently read books, but I will quickly just go through my to read pile that I have in front of me. Actually, one of these is a gift and 2 of these is borrowed. So, and I'm also going to be borrowing another one for my friend Lucy. So it'll take me a little while to get through all of these, but here we go. So next on my list to read is another David Sedaris book. If you've been following me for a little while, you know that a couple of months ago I read Calypso and absolutely loved it. It's hilarious. He's such a brilliant writer. He's got so many books out now. They're all kind of, I want to say, I guess they come under memoirs because they're stories of his life, but the way he writes them is just not like a memoir. It's fantastic. It's like little anecdotes of his life. It's fantastic. So this one is Let's Explore Diabetes with Owls. I can't wait to read this. His other, like I say, Calypso was just hilarious. I laughed out loud at it. So I'm really looking forward to reading another David Sedaris book. Then I've got one by Celeste Ng. I don't know how you say her surname. It's just Ng. Or maybe it's Ng. Celeste Ng. Little Fires Everywhere. This was very critically acclaimed. It's an international bestseller. Stylist said it's one of my favourite novels of the year. Gripping by the Times, outstanding by Matt Haig. So yeah, looking forward to this. I've heard really good things. I think it's about like a residential area and a couple of the people in it have secrets. One of those kind of stories. So looking forward to that. I've heard very good things. And then this one I got bought as a gift for my birthday. And was it for my birthday? No, for Christmas, sorry. And it's called I Was Told There'd Be Cake by Sloane Crosley. And I think this is similar to David Sedaris. I think this woman, I've not heard of her before, Sloane Crosley. I think it's anecdotes from her life that are just very funny. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to reading that as well. So those are on my list of books to read. You know what I've read and what I think about them. Please do give me lots of recommendations down in the comments. I just want to have a massive pile of books to read because that's my favourite thing to do. And please let me know your thoughts. If you've read any of those books that I spoke about, please let me know your thoughts. I really want to talk to someone about Fates and Furies and what it meant to them, because I thought it was just genius. And I really want to know what people thought of Ghost Wall and whether they were on my side with how atrocious it was. But yeah, please do let me know down in the comments what you're reading and what you're thinking of it at the moment. Let's just talk about books because it's the best thing of life. Okay guys, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to head over to rayofstyle.co.uk to read my blog posts, and also go follow me on Instagram, instagram.com/ wait, why would you be doing it on a website? Just go on the Instagram app like everybody else and type in rayofstyle_. I also have a film photography Instagram now, Ray of Film, so do go follow that as well. And do subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next video, guys. Bye.